instead of a straight key, there are times where you may need to use a mask to define the outline or the alpha channel for a layer. We'll take a look at number 6, the roto snare comp, and see where this might come into play. If we click and drag on the timeline, we can see that this is a simple zoom into our drum. If we part the playhead a little bit farther down the timeline, we can start to see where the chrome reflects the green screen in the environment where it was shot. If we drag down even further, we can see that the chrome picks up the green screen right at its edge. The problem that this presents is that our key will eliminate all of the green not only outside where the screen lives, but also inside the drum where the chrome is reflecting it. In order to isolate the drum from the background, we can't rely on a simple key or even key light to deliver what we need. In this instance, we're going to have to roto, which at times can be a very painful process. We'll navigate to the end of the clip just before the clip changes to the close-up of the glasses. Here on this last frame, we see exactly where the drum rests and see the shape of the entire drum that will be revealed. If we start to mask the shape from the first frame, we won't know what to expect when the entire image comes into frame. By starting at the end and working backwards, we can see all of the intricate parts of the chrome around the edge of the drum. To rotoscope the drum, we'll simply use the mask tool and create points around the outside. Again, in CS3, if you choose the pen tool without any layer selected, we're going to get the options for our shape layer. We can see this because the fill and the stroke options come up inside the toolbar. So you want to make sure that the layer is selected. You'll see that the only option you have is the mask tool, which has already been selected for you. You do have one option with the mask tool and your layer selected, and the option is for a roto Bezier shape. Previously, we've used the pen tool to create Bezier shapes. Bezier shapes can be simply created by clicking once or clicking and dragging to create a curve. We'll undo twice to get rid of both of these vertices that we've just created. So Ctrl-Z or Command-Z on a Mac will get rid of those. Instead, we'll choose Roto Bezier. Roto Bezier may not be the best tool to use for this drum, but we'll introduce it so that we can see some of the tools inside of this mask option. If we click once, then click again, and click a third time, we can see that a curve has automatically been created on the second point, although we haven't clicked and dragged as we would have with a traditional Bezier tool. If we continue to click around the outside of the drum shape, we can see that other curves are defined as we lay down the new points in our shape. We can click again in the center of our source layer just to lay down a random point, and we'll click one more time to demonstrate. If we click and drag, instead of moving handles out from our vertice, we're actually changing the position of that point. Like the Bezier tool, if we hover over the first point in our mask path, we'll get the small icon that indicates a closed loop, and once we click on it, that loop will be closed and our mask will be created. I'll switch to the selection tool, the V on the keyboard, and simply click and move these points around to allow them to encompass the entire drum area. When rotoscoping, it may be difficult to see what's outside or inside your mask shape once you've closed the loop. We can no longer see where the chrome ends and the true green screen begins. To remedy that, just type M on the keyboard and change our mask value from add to none. Now we can see not only our mask shape, but what is inside and outside of the mask. If we scrub the playhead in the timeline, we can see the source material moving and the mask shape staying still. What we'll need to do is create keyframes for our mask shape. So back at the last frame of our source material for this drum, we'll click the stopwatch for our mask path, defining an animation at this point. We'll move down 10 frames by holding the Shift key down and using page up. We can double-click on the mask shape to transform the entire mask and simply scale it up. There are some instances where you may need to modify the individual vertices along your mask shape. In the case of a Bezier vertice, simply moving the point around will only change the location of the mask point. You will need to move the handles in order to change the curve. On a Roto Bezier vertice, changing the position of the point will also change the value of the curve. Because Roto Bezier depends on the position of the points around this vertice to describe the curve, moving this will also change the value of that curve. Notice here that this curve changes even though I'm only moving the vertice here. To modify the curve value of this vertice, I'll hold the Control key and the Alt key down, or the Command key and the Option key on a Mac. This will change the icon from the Selection tool to a small caret icon with an arrow bar directly below it. If I scrub left or right with this icon selected and my vertices selected, I can change the value of the curve as it enters and leaves this specific point. By dragging to the left, I lower the amount of curve, and dragging to the right, I increase the amount of curve as the curve approaches the vertice. I can do this with all or with the individual vertices by clicking on them or selecting them individually. Once I make my modifications, I can move forward another 10 frames, then double-click all of the vertices and continue to move the shapes to encompass all of the drum. To perfect this may take some time, and you may need to set some keyframes in between these 10-frame jumps. But essentially, the method is still the same. We'll move the mask points around so they encompass the image that we want to preserve. Once we've isolated the image that we want, we'll change the mask value back to Add from None. Changing this back to None, we can see that the drummer's arm is in the background and needs to be isolated as well. If you want to, we can simply key out all of the information, including the drum, and place it below this currently rotoscoped layer. We'll open up the timeline so we can see a little bit more of what that looks like. Here we'll change the mask shape to Add. We'll duplicate the layer by using Ctrl-D or Command-D on the Mac. Then on the bottom layer, remove the mask entirely by selecting it and using Backspace or Delete. On the lower layer, we'll use the key light effect from our recent animation presets to key him out. We can see that the key light has removed all of the green from the background layer by turning the topmost layer off. By toggling the transparency grid, we can see where key light has removed some of the green in that chrome. Turning on layer 1 reveals the rotoscoped image, but also shows that we still have some green spill on the chrome. We'll select that layer, then from Effects, go down to our keying family, and again choose our spill suppression. This time we'll want to suppress all of the green that shows up in the chrome by simply clicking on it. Now that we've suppressed the color, we no longer have the green, but we do have an opaque shape that we can use to composite with.